Hey everybody, welcome back to CAF's Heroes of Sport. My name is Bob Babbitt, co-founder of Challenge Athletes Foundation, and every week we meet one of our amazing challenged athletes. This week we are honored to have award-winning journalist Mr. Miles O'Brien joining us. Miles, how you doing? Long time no chat.
It's great to see you again, Bob.
Always such a pleasure. And first of all, just looking back at your career as a journalist with PBS and CNN, former CNN anchor, and one of the things I was reading is you were actually training to potentially be the first journalist to fly on a space shuttle. True or not true?
Yeah, that is a true story. That is not fake news, Bob. I spent I was at CNN, and for several years, it took me a while. I was negotiating with both NASA and the Russians, trying to play one off the other, in order to secure a seat on the space shuttle and go to the International Space Station for a 10-day increment. And actually, it was a long road, and it's a very long, complicated story. But we actually had a deal, which we were going to announce about a week or so after Columbia was supposed to have landed in February of 2003. And of course, we know that did not work out so well. So my dream of going to space ended with the loss of Columbia. So that was, it was a sad moment for many other reasons, way beyond my personal adventures being foiled. But it still stung because I was very close.
So were you always a science guy growing up? How did you become the sort of the authority on space and science?
I am a complete fraud, Bob. I'm just here to tell you right now. I grew
Both
up
of us.
imposter syndrome, pal. Imposter syndrome. The
It
fact that
works.
you,
If you talk fast, you can get away with it.
yeah, see, you got the secret. So I grew up kind of afraid of the periodic table. I don't think I was taught science very well. And I made my way into a career in journalism because I found that interesting. I was a history major at Georgetown. And in the early 90s, I heard that CNN was looking for a science correspondent. Now, I didn't know anything about science, but I really wanted to go to CNN. I was working in Boston in local news, and I managed to cobble together enough of a demonstration tape to get an interview. I went down, it was a 2-day interview, which included going around doing a story, reading in front of the teleprompter, all this stuff, but also a written and verbal exam on science. And how do you think I did on that?
You flunked it.
I flunked it. So I get to the end of the line after all these interviews, the president of CNN, Bob Fernand, and he's looking at my folder, doesn't even look up from his desk. And he goes, well, obviously you don't know shit about science. That was what I said. And so that's one of those moments, Bob, where what do you do, right? And I threw the Hail Mary pass. I said, that's why you want to hire me. You don't need somebody who knows science. You need somebody who's not afraid of science and is able to communicate it. And I can tell you, I can figure this stuff out. And he was like, he kind of shrugged, and that was it. And I got the job. So, and actually, it turns out that was truer than I thought at the time.
That is amazing. So while you're at CNN, science, space, aviation technology, environmental correspondent, you covered Hubble space and the Hubble telescope and everything.
Yeah.
Some of your favorite stories?
Oh my God. I had the great fortune to cover the second space flight of John Glenn on the shuttle. This is October of '98. And I got to know him really well in the process of that. Senator Glenn was just such a hero of mine growing up, and then to meet him and to have this relationship with him and develop he's constantly offering me story ideas. But on top of that, my co-anchor for this whole event was Walter Cronkite, my other boyhood hero. And so I had this amazing opportunity to cover this story, which was just epically fun. And with somebody who I idolized, about somebody who I idolized. And it was kind of, it was one of those full circle, amazing moments. And, it's the flip side of that was being involved in covering Columbia when we lost her in February of 2003. I was on the air for 16 hours straight. So, and, a lot of people, I still meet people today who say, I remember that day and thank you because you helped me get through that. And, that's what we get in this racket for.
Exactly. So February 2014, you're doing a shoot, and back then, you've been in Japan and the Philippines, and you're stacking the Pelican cases, and you were sort of a one-man show, right? You were
Yeah.
shooting. Talk a
Yeah.
little bit
So
about what happened.
I started the trip as one manned and two armed and became one manned and one armed. So just to fast forward a little bit,
Yeah.
I left CNN in '08. They decided that they didn't need a science unit anymore. And so on I went and I started doing stuff for PBS, but I have my own company. I have a little production company. I do stuff for the new PBS NewsHour, Nova, Frontline mostly, and then a few other clients. But that's my main event. I love working for PBS because they care about the stuff I care about. So I was in Asia doing some stories for the NewsHour, went to Fukushima and went down to the Philippines to do a story on golden rice, a genetically modified rice, which is controversial. It's a very interesting story. But I was done with everything. And I went because I was a cheapskate and had my own company and I had a fixed price deal for each story. I said, I'll just do this on my own. So I did a lot of the shooting myself and et cetera. So I'm in my hotel room alone in the Philippines, done with all my shooting. I'm stacking up the cases, planning a little jaunt to the beach just to get a little downtime because I heard the beaches were great there. And the case fell on my arm and it just didn't get any better. The bruise became something much worse. The pain got worse over a 24-hour period. I got tingling. It was clear something was very wrong. So I'm in the Philippines. I managed to get to a doctor. It was, talk about being a fish out of water. And I walked in and he said, I knew it was bad, but he said, look, we have to do emergency surgery. I think you have what's called acute compartment syndrome, which of course, immediately I'm on my phone trying to figure out what the heck that is. And I didn't like what I read. And so he made me sign a release saying, when you wake up, you might not have an arm. And I said, oh boy, this is for all the marbles here. Right. So, and when I woke up from the surgery, I was convinced I still have my arm. Just like I am today. If I close my eyes, I feel my arm. But sadly, things didn't go well in the surgery. So listen, maybe they could have saved it if I had been in the United States. I don't know. But the moral of the story is don't be cheap, hire a photographer because it's still.
You never know.
I got to tell you, that shoot actually did cost me an arm, if not. I got a disc.
I love your attitude because you wrote a blog, Just a Flesh Wound. It's like this, you lost your arm. How hard was this for you as a guy who was a two-arm guy? Now you're a one-arm guy trying to do the same job and be an athlete. Talk a little about the struggles.
Yeah, I a little bit, I think maybe some of that might have been some of the narcotics I was on that time, but I immediately thought of the Black Knight from Monty Python. That's just kind of where I am. It's kind of the way I think, and so it's like, there I am. And I got to tell you, when it dawns on you that you have this new reality, it's immediately overwhelming. Because you think, it's one of those things where you want to take on all the problems at once, right? And all the issues. I didn't even know if they would, I've never seen a one-armed correspondent on television. Could I be on television? And then the first thing I had to do was I had to produce these stories, which I spent all this money to come out and get them on TV. I had to confront the QWERTY keyboard with one hand. And that was my first obstacle. And so I was like, okay, let's break this problem down. I can just type solo. Maybe I can do it. I was hunting and pecking. I didn't like that very much. And then I realized, wait a minute, I've got dragon dictation on this computer. I don't ever use it, but maybe I'll use this thing. I started dictating my stories. I was like, oh, I can do this. And so that in microcosm was my first step along a way of doing confronting a problem on a day-to-day basis and coming up with a new way to do it, kind of being a one-arm MacGyver, right? What's the hack for this thing? Is it a knife that has a little semicircle in it so you can cut with one hand? Is it a cutting board that holds the food in place? Is it the dragon dictation? one piece after another. You have to go through them all. But if you try to take it on all at once, you start going into a spiral. And that's where I was headed. So it really helped me. What's that expression? What's the best way to eat an elephant? They say one bite at a time,
One
right?
bite at a time.
Yeah. And so I had to just take one bite at a time. And eventually I got to the point, I remember it very distinctly, Bob. This is many months later. And I just remember every day being so fatigued at the end of the day, because all the things, just picking up the glass and drinking that you don't think about, I had to think about it, right? On top of doing my job and everything else. By the end of the day, I was exhausted. So one day I'm sitting on my balcony in Washington at the time, and I'm eating my bagel with cream cheese on it. And I sat there, bit into it. And I thought, wait a minute. I just did that without even thinking about it. And that was actually a problem prior, right? But I did it, and it was subconscious, just like it was when I had two arms. And I said, you know what? You're there, pal. You're going to make it. And but you have to go through this process that really takes, you got to constantly be, giving yourself a pep talk along the way that, you can do this one step at a time. Don't let the big problem overwhelm, the forest for the trees, whatever cliche you want to use, you got to take it one at a time.
So as a guy who's always been active, right? You've always been a fitness guy.
Yeah.
How did you have to adapt there? Did you end up getting a prosthetic so you could ride your bike? We'll talk a little bit about just
So I have great prosthetic help with. Well, so I will. I got to say this before we go too far, though, because I tell this story all the time. Within days, I got an email from. She's no longer with CAF, but from the Challenged Athletes Foundation saying, "Hey, we heard about your situation. Let us know if you need anything." And I had no idea what CAF was. And I looked on the website. I was like, wow. And then I emailed back and I said, I don't, what's the catch, right? She said, there is no catch. She said, we'll get you any gadget you want in order to achieve your goals of remaining active and remaining an athlete. And I said, you mean for free? I was like, she said, sure. And I said, well, wow. I said, fortunately, I have really, this was a workers' comp claim. I don't have to worry about anything, save resources for others who are more in need. But I never forgot how cool it was that existed. And that for people out there who didn't have my fortunate circumstance on the financial side, to get an email like that and know there's an organization like that out there, I will never forget that. And that's why I will always be supportive of what you guys do. So back to your question though, this is my biking arm. And so, it pops in here, I got a pin and it's got a little, that elbow is has a little bit of flexion in it. And you can,
very cool.
You can dial in the flexion. And then this, it's like a trailer hitch almost, the reverse of a trailer hitch, and it pops down on a socket on my bike, which has a quick release mechanism. So if you can't, you come apart from the bike. But I've worn this thing. I've ridden across Michigan over a 2-day ride. It's over 300 miles over 2 days. I've worn that thing the whole way, and it works like a charm. I tried riding with one arm. That didn't go well. And who I talked a lot about, I reached out to very early on. When I heard about CAF, wasn't long before I heard about Willie, of course. Everybody knows.
One-arm Willie.
Of course, right? And so I reached out to him and asked him for some advice on what he used and so forth. He was invaluable. So I found you guys are just a great community of support and equipment and everything else. And, I haven't had to get a prosthetic from you guys, but it's just nice to know you're there.
So you also did, I think you did Ironman 70.3 Oceanside with your son.
That was awesome. Yeah.
How fun was that to do an event with your son?
Well, the whole event, it'll make me cry if I get going. First of all, to do it with my son, he's in the Navy, he was stationed there. That was really cool. I have a dear friend who has done several Ironmen, and he lives in Paris. And I said, hey, I'm going to do this. He hopped on a plane, came over for 2 days to do it with me. But the thing, and he and I talk about this all the time, participating with the CAF and Operation Rebound people was just the most inspire, you know, that inspire word, you know, people get hung up on that. And when people say to me, you inspire me, it makes me a little weird, but I can't, there's no other word to describe how awesome it was to see the spirit of these people, these athletes, facing their various challenges. And it was amazing. So, you know, and I'd love to tell this story. We, you know, of course, being with all you, one of the great advantages of being with Operation Rebound CAF is we got to go in like the second wave.
Yep, we did.
Right. Which was kind of cool, except when you start thinking about it, I'm a one-armed swimmer, you know, so I go in circles mostly. I have to, it's a hard, I got to straighten it out. And, so if you think about that for a minute, so there we are between the fastest wave and the second fastest wave in this little dead zone. And I'm with my buddy Vadim, and we're kind of halfway through it. I'm going, this is great. There's nobody out here. Right?
Famous last
I said,
word.
Vadim, how are we doing? And he looks back and he goes, Miles, there is war coming. Next thing I know, I am inside a washing machine. I have no idea what's up. And they went over me like, but I will. We got through that. But all those experiences. The best thing was just being with, and I'm going to forget all their names, but you know, wheelchairs and missing limbs and blind, and all your all-stars that were there. Such cool people, and such an appreciation. It gives me such an appreciation of what competition in sport is really about. Yes. And what's important about it, and how it has, you know, it's all about a personal challenge to yourself, because that's what it is to me. And you know, some of your athletes are actually going to win things, but for most of us, it's just to be able to prove to ourselves that we're still ourselves, that I'm still Miles. And that was, sport was such a big part of that for me, to know I could still do these things.
How has this changed you as a journalist? Does it change the way you approach stories at all?
Completely. I mean, you know, I have, first of all, when I see people who have any disability, there's an immediate unspoken thing that I didn't even know existed. You know, we have a conversation that is honest about mutual disability that doesn't come up as a whole-bodied person. It's interesting, you know, and I have very visible disabilities. So people come up and they'll start talking about, you know, I have this, and this has been my struggle. And we have an honest, there's no mutual pity. It's just a discussion about disability, which I really appreciate, which doesn't always happen with whole-bodied individuals and the disabled for various reasons. But the other thing that I learned is in the course of this is, you know, frankly, we need to, as journalists, really be thinking about how we treat people who've had misfortune, and not. So just to give you an example, Sanjay Gupta, my friend, did it. I was reluctant to turn this into. I didn't want to be Miles O'Brien, the amputee. I just wanted to be Miles O'Brien, who happens to be missing an arm. And he's back to work. So I didn't do a whole film myself on it, but Sanjay convinced me to do a film for CNN, and he. In the course of him asking the questions, and he did a great job, you know, I ended up just losing it on camera. And it gave me a profound learning experience of what it's like to be on the receiving end of my job. You know, when you're going around asking questions, and if you're doing your job right, you are getting into everybody's personal beeswax, right? And I do not run nearly as roughshod over that terrain as I used to. I think I was, frankly, not empathetic enough, maybe, or appreciative enough of personal. I mean, I've had loss in my life. I've lost my sister, lost my mother, but you know, I've had loss in a really profound way, and have had the experience of somebody asking me to talk about it. And so when I ask others to talk about their losses, I am a different person entirely in the way I do it. And I'll tell you, I'll walk away from it so fast if they say, look, I can't do this. I think maybe I've lost the killer instinct, but so be it.
What's your favorite CAF moment?
Oh, I just think, you know, being a part of that, you know, the whole experience of doing Oceanside was amazing. But being there, I guess it was the day before when we all met,
Yes.
and we're in one room, and we all got up and just talked about how each of our personal experiences, and in some cases how we were helping raise money for Operation Rebound. I mean, there was not a dry eye in the house. What was fantastic about it was the great sense of camaraderie and friendship, and the complete. It's an acknowledgement and yet not an obsession with the disabilities that were present, if that makes any sense. It's not all about the disability. We happen to be disabled athletes. We share something in common, but really what we're all about is individuals who want to achieve something. And again, you have to be in that world to understand that. I think the able-bodied world looks at us and, kind of almost pats us on the head and say, "Oh, you're so inspiring," and all that stuff. And there you go. That's so sweet. You can do that. And there's none of that in that room. And so that to me is CAF in a nutshell, is a great sense of, obviously acknowledging the disability. After all, that's what it is all about, but just, slogging through, that expression I use all the time. Well, there's two I like. There's Winston Churchill. If you're going through hell, keep going, right? And then Marcus Aurelius, if you fail to acknowledge your injury itself will go away. And that's really what that's all about. That sounds like denialism, but it's not. It's just making the injury a part of your life, not the focus, and you're not doing things in spite of it or for it. You just happen to be disabled and you're doing your thing. And to meet people like that is priceless.
Love it. Miles, thank you so much for taking time to chat with us. But I could go all day just talking Miles O'Brien stories. You are the best. And we love having you part of CAF.
Well, maybe I should have a job where I talk for a living. What do you think?
We both do. I love it. Miles O'Brien has been our guest again. This is Heroes of Sport. My name is Bob Babbitt. Thanks so much for joining us. Miles, you're the best. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you, Bob.